Have we got any apologies, Neil, please?
Apologies from Sally Gurney, and I believe that Jackie Jagger is joining the meeting on Teams, and we can all see her there.
Okay, thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting, which seems like forever ago. It's so last year. Are you happy that I sign them as the correct record of the meeting? Okay, thank you. Any declarations of interest? Any public questions?
We have no public questions, no member questions, and no town or parish questions, Chair.
That's good. Item 26, update on the councillor conduct complaints. Andrew, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So this is on page 9 to 16. So it's the usual format. Obviously, we are nearly at the end of the council year, so it's pretty much a sort of comprehensive update for you in terms of the complaints that have been received this year, and indeed some historic complaints. So in terms of headlines, this year we've had 12 complaints in total, 9 of which related to borough councillors and 3 relating to town and parish councillors. We'll perhaps talk about this in a few minutes when you look at the annual report, but that does compare favourably to 23-24 when there were 19 complaints in total. So I think that's sort of very encouraging in terms of the high standards of conduct that councillors are exhibiting. So the 24-25 complaints are all set out on Appendix A, and the headlines from those 12 complaints was that there was just one code of conduct complaint where the councillors concerned, and they were town and parish councillors, were found to be in breach. So as I say, that's 1 out of the 12 that we had in this current year. If I move on to the outstanding complaints that we had relating to, or that were received back in 23-24, there's 2 that are referenced in Appendix B. So the first one there has now been resolved with a finding of a breach, and that was reported to council earlier this year, and the decision notice was published. The second complaint has reached the investigation stage, in that the investigator has concluded her work, has provided some draft conclusions. That's with the subject member concerned. I've been in correspondence with them this week, and by the end of this week, I'll be able to confirm whether there will need to be a hearings panel for that complaint to be considered, or whether or not the councillor accepts the conclusions from the investigator, in which case we would go straight to a decision notice and any appropriate sanctions. So that's the sort of overall picture in terms of the complaints from this year and last year. I do reference in the report that for those of you particularly who are on the hearings panel on the 7th of January, one of the issues that we picked up that we're going to be providing some further training on is around membership of local campaign and Facebook groups and other social media. So just making sure that we give some clear guidance in terms of what's appropriate and what might not be appropriate. Neil's team is producing that, and that will be available shortly. I think that's probably it, Chair, in terms of sort of the overview, but happy to take any questions on the report itself and any details.
Thank you. Sheena.
I just wondered if there was any change in the nature of the complaints. The volume hasn't changed so much, but the type of complaint, and whether there's a sort of trend for sort of vexatious complaints. Just a wonder.
I think in terms of vexatious, I wouldn't say that any of the complaints that I've received are vexatious, although I would say quite a few of them were quite low level, so didn't meet the threshold of the code of conduct. But obviously the complainant felt strongly enough to actually bring it to the council's attention and ask for it to be looked at. So, like I say, yes, no sort of evidence of vexatious. I think the only sort of trend, and I'd probably say this every meeting, so it's probably not a trend at all, but social media is a sort of continuing sort of pattern in terms of things that people have seen written on social media that provoke responses in terms of the code of conduct.
Caroline.
Sorry, can I just carry on from that? When the person made the complaint and you found no breach, was the person quite happy with the outcome?
I think it varies, to be perfectly honest. Probably the majority of complainants don't come back to me. But in one or two cases, yes, people do feel aggrieved and feel that they're dissatisfied. And I guess that's always the sort of balance between people may remain dissatisfied, but the code of conduct has certain thresholds in terms of conduct and standards and behaviour that weren't met in those sort of particular circumstances.
Any more questions? Thank you very much. Let's go on to the annual.
So if I just introduce this to the committee, so this is the report for you to consider this evening, and subject to any comments, additions, amendments that you'd like to see in this report, it will be presented by the chair at the council meeting a week on Thursday. To represent sort of in the most instance a sort of factual representation of what the committee did, the membership of the committee, and I guess it's also an opportunity for the chair to stress the importance of good standards. So I just wanted to just make a couple of points. The first is, and thank you to Councillor Matthews for picking up the error in the report, because it does say that there were no findings of a breach in 24-25, and as we've just heard, there was that one example of the town and parish breach. So I'll update the report in respect of that. I think the other thing that you may want to sort of reinforce as well is the fact that you've considered 12 complaints this year. That compares to 19 the year before. So I would say even 19 is quite relatively low compared to other councils, but certainly 12 this year is, I would say, sort of very much on the low level. I'll stop there, Chair.
Again, any questions, Imogen?
How do we compare to other councils, approximately?
I think it's hard to say, because I think in terms of standards, it's not just the number or the volume of complaints, but it's also the seriousness. And certainly I can think of some examples with some of our neighbouring councillors that have made the national press, for example, because of the particular type of complaint and the now, I won't go into details, but you can, if you Google it, you can see sort of probably the complaint that I'm referring to there. But I think in terms of numbers, I would say certainly we're in the lower quartile compared to other councils. It's a point I'm happy to take away, though, Chair, to come up with some information for your next meeting in terms of benchmarking and giving you that sort of comparisons.
I think that would be quite good information for us, Andrew, if we could do that. Do I see another hand up? No? Well, that's just about it then. This will come forward to full council. Is it next week or the week after? Yeah, week on Thursday. Yeah.
As I said about Joe Cox, we don't have many councillors reporting any incidents of problems from residents escalating.
So, certainly in terms of complaints that or issues that come my way, I would say no, very occasionally, but there's certainly no great significance. But obviously as councillors yourselves, you might have a different experience. What I would say is I'd encourage you to report things through me, because again, it's good, if nothing else, it's good intelligence and data in terms of sort of what it is actually like out there for yourselves as councillors.
Speaking about that, I think there's a lot of us that accept it as the norm, and you become a little bit desensitized to it, which I don't think is very helpful as a person, and also stopping it from happening to other people in the future. So, for example, I have a person that every time I write anything, they instantly appear on my Facebook, and they write unpleasant comments about it. And I've generally replied back. But then it was something that came up somewhere else where it said, this is actually unhealthy behaviour, whereas this person is waiting for you to post anything, even if it was something like I'd done this, or I'd run the marathon, or I'd done it, this person would appear on my social media. And I thought, this is really quite unhealthy that this person is constantly watching what I'm doing. And I read something, especially about women, in that it said that if these kind of behaviours are happening all the time, you should be reporting it, and you don't have to accept this kind of behaviour. I'm kind of just saying this as a brief example, but some of the comments written were not very nice, but I've just accepted it. And so I think further training in that, for me, I think everybody as a group, would be really helpful for us to know what kind of, where do we draw the line. I now made a decision that I felt uncomfortable, and I've blocked this person, whereas before I'd allowed it to happen, but I did feel it would become slightly unhealthy. So I think moving forward, I think it would be useful for members to have further training if possible, about, because unfortunately sometimes as women, I know people say things to me that they wouldn't say, because my husband's a counsellor, I know they wouldn't say to him. And unfortunately, sometimes we are direct to get direct. And believe me, I'm not a victim. I'm quite capable of standing up for myself, probably more than Charles is. But we do get a lot of some of this behaviour directed at us, and sometimes it does make me feel uncomfortable. But I think we've normalised it sometimes. It's just my humble opinion on it.
I must say that trolls, which is what you had, that was a troll. You let them reply once, twice, but after that, block them. And from my point of view, and I've stood as a parliamentary candidate 3 times, and they give us training if you're in that role, because you're just going to get loads. And so there is a basic protocols that they go through with you. There's no harm in doing the same for councillors as such, if you can find someone who can do it. But you are right, it is the norm. It happens to the men as well, but it's slightly different with women. But it's part of the role, I think, on a lot of it. But yeah, I mean, it shouldn't be, and certainly reporting it. When you say report it means report it to Facebook or wherever the medium it's coming through. And blocking trolls, yeah, it's knowing how to tackle it. Okay, that's a troll, block it. It's the only thing you can do in any sense, I think. So, but yeah, after you've been through the mill a few times, it's just there. But yeah.
Yeah, just picking up on that sort of conversation. So firstly, I know there's been a few personal safety security briefings that the police have offered. I don't know what the take-up has been by councillors, but obviously I'd encourage you to go to those, and I'll follow up with the police as well in terms of what further briefings they've got. And I did, although I haven't checked with the parish clerks, but I did offer those dates or that email to the parish clerks as well. So hopefully that's been spread more widely than just the borough councillors. I think in terms of the reporting bit, that the thing that I'd add is that if we think about what we do as officers in the council around data breaches or information security issues, we've very much encouraged a sort of report it culture of sort of like near misses or concerns. And that's been really helpful in terms of amending our training offer, looking at how we could tighten up controls. So it's not about, it's not been a blame culture, but it's been a very sort of open, transparent culture to encourage and improvement. And again, I think it's the same thing here, that if it's all sort of kept behind the scenes and under cover, it's harder to do something about it, and your experience is being shared more widely in terms of how to respond, and all of that I think is really important, because it is as public figures, you'll know better than me that you're very much in the limelight, and the world today, particularly with social media, is can be very difficult at times.
I think it might be quite useful if anything pops up, particularly on Facebook. I don't know anything else about social media that's nasty, that we just record it somewhere and talk to each other about it more than we do now. Sam, so that at least we speak to each other about it, even if it's in an unofficial way. But it might be useful for Andrew to know how often that sort of incident's happening. If you've read it, it might be useful if you've got any comments to make them now. Or are you happy with it? Okay. Well, I'm pleased to say that that's it. Another year over, eh? Yeah. Okay, thank you everyone for coming, and it's nice to see everyone. Sorry, I'm Sam, you missed most of the meeting, but if you want to ask any questions, see me in a minute. Okay.